Everyone thinks SUVs got better over time, but something strange happened in the early 2000s. Car companies realized almost nobody was going off-road, so they quietly rebuilt SUVs to be smoother and softer. One by one, they all changed. Except Jeep. Because the Wrangler kept the parts that made SUVs real, and that's why it's the last one left. Most SUVs changed, but Wrangler stayed different. A quiet little study back in the early 2000s flipped the entire SUV world upside down. Almost nobody saw what came next. Car companies ran the numbers on how SUV owners actually drive. Research from the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute showed the vast majority of SUV trips never leave paved roads. Buyers were using them for school runs, coffee runs, and highway cruising. Almost nobody headed into the woods, and the data was loud enough to change boardroom decisions across the whole industry. So the big bosses asked a brutal question. Why build these things like army trucks when buyers treat them like lifted hatchbacks? Ford answered in 2011 by yanking the truck frame out of the Explorer and dropping the body onto a car platform shared with the Taurus sedan. A Taurus. Let that land for a second. Nissan pulled the same move on the Pathfinder in 2013. Honda Passport rolls on a Unibody borrowed from a minivan. Even a Range Rover Sport pushing 110 grand shares bones with a much softer cousin. The whole class went soft at the same time, and almost nobody outside of car forums noticed the switch happening. What that change really means shows up the second you drive them back to back. Most modern SUVs use something called the Unibody platform, where the body and frame are combined into a single structure. It's lighter, quieter, and better for fuel economy, but it's also designed for pavement, not punishment. The Wrangler still uses a body-on-frame design. That means the body sits on top of a separate steel frame, similar to a pickup truck. It's heavier and less refined, but it can handle twisting forces, uneven terrain, and impacts without the structure flexing or failing. That's the trade-off the industry made. Comfort and efficiency over durability and real off-road strength. The Wrangler refused to make that trade. Jeep watched every rival tap out, shook its head, and made a call that made zero business sense and total cultural sense. The Wrangler kept the steel frame, kept the noise, kept the bumpy ride, and doubled down on everything the rest of the industry quietly buried. Curious what Jeep actually bolted under the Wrangler? Buckle up, because the next piece hides something nobody else dares to build anymore. Solid axles. Still give it real strength. A brand new $90,000 Lexus LX can get stuck in a shallow mud puddle. A Wrangler half the price walks through the same puddle without flinching. Why? One chunky steel bar the rest of the industry threw in the trash. Solid axles. One thick metal tube stretches straight across, linking both wheels on each end. Heavy. Loud. Old school as a cassette player. The original Willys MB from 1941 used the same idea. So does the Wrangler rolling out of the Toledo assembly plant in 2026. Same bones, 85 years later. On rough ground, a solid axle slams one wheel down while the other climbs, keeping grip locked tight no matter how weird the trail gets. Ask anyone who spends weekends on famous off-road spots like the Rubicon Trail in California or Moab in Utah, and the same pattern shows up every single year. Independent suspension crossovers beach themselves on rocks because one wheel floats into the air and the power vanishes. A floating wheel gives zero grip. Zero grip ends with a tow strap, a ruined Saturday, and a long, quiet drive home. Meanwhile, bone stock Wranglers crawl the same trails and park at the end with their engines still cool. The Wrangler stands alone as the only mass-produced SUV sold in America with a live, solid front axle. Bronco dropped it. 4Runner dropped it. Land Cruiser dropped it. A $150,000 G-Wagon gave up the solid front years back. Jeep sits alone in that club. Tough guts under the floor set up the weirdest public trick in the whole car world, and the story gets wilder from here. Taking the doors off changes everything. Fast. What if your car could turn into a steel golf cart in under 10 minutes? One vehicle pulls that off legally on public roads across most of America. Grab a cheap Torx bit from Home Depot. A few minutes later, you're rolling down the street with 0 doors. Normal day for Wrangler owners across America. Try the same move on a BMW X5. The car has a full meltdown. Error codes flash, airbag warnings scream. The whole thing refuses to shift out of park. Jeep built the Wrangler on purpose for this trick. External door hinges, quick snap wiring plugs that pop loose by hand. The mirrors bolt onto the body instead of the doors, so they stay put when the doors come off. A set of Wrangler doors weighs around 60 pounds each and takes about 8 bolts to remove. Now for the part that melts people's brains. The Wrangler floor has real rubber drain plugs built in, so you can spray the inside with a garden hose after a muddy weekend. A Range Rover owner would need a tow truck and a lawyer after trying that. Jeep just sells you fresh floor mats and waves goodbye. Some Wrangler diehards even bolt on marine-grade speakers and treat the whole interior like a convertible boat that happens to have 4 wheels. Popping the doors off still ranks around second weirdest, though. You haven't seen the craziest move yet. Quick side note, if you want your Jeep to actually last long-term, I put together a simple Jeep longevity blueprint that breaks down what to do, when to do it, and what most owners overlook. It's linked below if you want to check it out. That fold-down windshield still feels special today. Picture driving 60 miles an hour with nothing between your face and the open sky. No glass, no frame, just wind, bugs, and freedom. Wild, right? One SUV still lets you do it in 2026. The Wrangler lets you fold the whole windshield flat down onto the hood. Unbolt 4 torque screws from the frame, pop the wipers, tip the glass forward. Sky straight ahead. The last Toyota to offer this move? The FJ40 Land Cruiser, killed off in 1984. The last Ford with a fold-down windshield? The first-gen Bronco from the 70s. Modern crash rules basically buried the feature everywhere else because the windshield holds up part of the rollover structure during a flip. So every rival gave up and walked away. Jeep refused. Jeep engineered the Wrangler roll cage strong enough to handle the crash load instead of relying on the glass, which means the fold-down passes every modern safety test. The move lives in the official owner's manual with diagrams and step-by-step instructions. Jeep even sells dealer-approved tie-down straps so the glass stays locked flat on the hood during highway speeds. One massive car company fought regulators for decades to save a trick no rival bothered with. No profit in it. No marketing boost big enough to matter. Just pure loyalty to what the Wrangler has always been since World War II. That kind of stubborn loyalty shows up one more time in the meanest Wrangler trim money can buy, and the numbers behind it sound almost fake. Low-range gears show it means business. Ready for a number that sounds made up? One factory SUV can crawl up a near vertical rock face at walking speed without the engine quitting. The Wrangler Rubicon hides a gearbox called Rock Track, with a crawl ratio around 84:1 on the 6-speed manual. Stay with me for one quick breakdown. Crawl ratio tells you how slow and strong the wheels turn at the lowest gear. The higher the number, the more a vehicle can creep up steep ground without stalling the engine or losing control. Check the rivals. The Ford Bronco Badlands tops out around 67:1. The 4Runner TRD Pro lands near 44:1. The Rubicon sits way ahead at 84:1. Biggest number in the factory SUV game. And the party keeps going. The Rubicon ships with Dana 44 axles front and rear, electronic locking differentials on both ends, a front sway bar that disconnects with the push of a button for extra wheel flex, and 33-inch BF Goodrich tires from the showroom floor. Try ordering that package from Toyota or Honda. You'll get a blank stare and a confused salesman. A shop would charge you around 10 grand to bolt the same parts onto a Bronco, plus another weekend of labor and a bunch of angry phone calls to the parts guy. Jeep loads the Rubicon from the factory at around 48 grand, ready to roll straight off the lot onto a boulder field. Paper specs tell one story, though. The way a Wrangler feels in real life tells a much louder one. It still feels tough, raw, and honest. Sit inside a modern luxury SUV for 30 seconds, and the whole world outside goes mute. Feels like driving a high-end coffin. Soft leather wraps your back, glowing screens light up the dash, Potholes vanish before they reach your seat. Climb into a Wrangler instead. The door shuts with a hollow metal clunk that sounds like a tool shed slamming. Fire the engine and the floor shakes a bit. Every pebble on the pavement travels straight up through your spine. The steering feels heavy and slow because solid axles turn with zero grace. Highway noise inside a Wrangler Rubicon runs around 77 decibels at 70 miles per hour. Loud enough to make phone calls a wrestling match and Bluetooth music a full volume battle. Real quick, if this breakdown has kept you locked in this far, tap that subscribe button before the next section hits. New videos drop every Friday. Back to it. And now for the part that should scare every other SUV brand. Wrangler owners love every single second of the chaos. Feeling the road means knowing the machine. Most people hate the whole vibe and walk off the dealership lot. The ones who stay become lifelong Jeep people. Jeep sells around 180,000 Wranglers a year in America, and Wrangler loyalty ranks among the highest in the entire auto industry. Owners tattoo the grille on their arms. They pass Wranglers down to their kids. They wave at strangers driving the same vehicle, a tradition called the Jeep wave that goes back decades. No other SUV brand gets that kind of love, that kind of community, or that kind of ride-or-die energy. That loyalty leads to the biggest reason any of this matters. This is why Wrangler still feels real. Time for the truth nobody in the car world wants to say out loud. Every SUV maker in America chased the exact same dream after the year 2000. Softer seats, quieter cabins, bigger touchscreens, better fuel numbers, smoother highway manners. Rival after rival crossed the finish line. One by one, they all caved. They turned into tall cars wearing rugged paint jobs. Fine for school pickup, fine for grocery runs. Useless on a real trail the second the pavement ends. Jeep had every reason to join the pack. A softer Wrangler would have sold like crazy. Building one would have cost Jeep far less money. Profit margins would have jumped. Shareholders would have thrown a party. Dealerships would have stocked up. Jeep walked away from all of it without blinking. Somebody inside that company figured out a truth the rest of the industry missed. The Wrangler works as a promise, not a product. A promise that one single vehicle in America will keep getting built the old way for the people who still want the old way. Steel frame, solid axles, doors that unbolt, a windshield that folds, a crawl ratio bigger than anything else on the market, drain plugs in the floor. Every piece of the recipe stands as a middle finger to the entire modern SUV playbook. And that stubborn call is exactly why, in 2026, the Jeep Wrangler wears the crown of last real SUV still rolling off an American factory line. Never the quickest, never the fanciest, forever the most honest vehicle on four wheels, and the only one that still remembers what an SUV was actually built to be in the first place. So now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Wrangler is really the last true SUV? Or have other brands just evolved and Jeep stayed stuck? Drop your take in the comments. And if you're into real car breakdowns like this, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.